The first sensation Aiden Reese registered was the absence of sound. Not silence, something deeper, stranger. An engineered stillness, like the world around him was being carefully filtered through a veil. His eyes opened to cold, clinical light. Overhead, glowing hexagons pulsed in rhythmic waves, scanning him. He lay on a levitating table, wrists unbound but heavy, as though gravity itself was denser here. The room surrounding him was impossibly white, sharp-edged, humming with intelligence. Figures moved beyond the blur of his vision, tall, pale beings with elongated limbs, eyes like liquid obsidian. 5 of them stood in formation, observing. Behind them, 2 humanoid figures in white coats whispered into devices and nodded without looking up. Aiden sat up slowly, ignoring the stabbing pulse in his temples. No restraints. No obvious weapons. A test? The aliens made no move to stop him. One, with a slightly broader brow ridge and bioluminescent lines running down its neck, took a cautious step forward. Its gaze was analytical, almost reverent. Aiden noted the subtleties, breathing patterns, shifts in stance, the subtle twitch of digits. He'd studied enemy body language his whole life. These weren't soldiers. They were scientists. Curiosity saturated the air like vapor. "You hear me?" Aiden asked, his voice rough, breaking the spell of silence. The lead alien tilted its head. From behind the group, a human voice emerged, male, clipped, clinical. "Yes, Mr. Reese. They hear you, but they're more interested in how you hear them." Aiden shifted his gaze to the speaker. A man in his late 50s, gray at the temples, stood beside a console, tapping through a translucent screen that flickered with bio-readouts. His lab coat bore a symbol Aiden didn't recognize, 2 interlocking spirals orbiting a triangle. "Where am I?" Aiden asked, voice calm but edged with steel. "You're in a controlled research facility," the man replied. "You were selected for observation." "Selected?" Aiden gave a short laugh. "I remember crashing in the Andes. 1 second I'm bleeding out. Next thing I know, I'm floating in a box of light." The human's expression didn't change. "Your survival made you ideal. Your neurological profile is uniquely resilient." "So, I'm a lab rat," Aiden muttered, sliding off the table. His boots touched the floor with a soft hum. The lead alien stepped forward again. It raised a long-fingered hand, palm outward, and a low harmonic sound pulsed through the chamber. Aiden felt it more than heard it. His muscles tensed involuntarily. The human nodded. "They're initiating baseline contact. Mental calibration." "No," Aiden said sharply. "Tell them to stop. They have no concept of stop. They only collect." He didn't wait. Aiden surged forward, closing the distance with terrifying speed. The alien flinched, but before he could strike, a blue wall of energy shimmered into existence between them. He hit it with a crackling thud, falling back a step. The scientist sighed. "Aggression is predictable, but they don't fear it. They've studied countless species, subjugated, dissected, cataloged. You're different. Not stronger. Not smarter. But incompatible." "Incompatible?" Aiden straightened. "Their systems can't map your mind. It rejects their input like a virus. It's not resistance. It's interference." One of the aliens suddenly turned its head toward the console and began emitting a rapid series of clicks. The human scientist frowned, then tapped his screen. "Fascinating," he murmured. "They're experiencing what they describe as resonant corruption. Your thoughts are bleeding into their neural echo fields." "Good," Aiden said. "Means I'm not alone in here." The lead alien backed away slightly, its composure fractured. Another alien touched its own skull, blinking erratically. The harmonic hum that had suffused the room began to distort, as if Aiden's presence was unraveling their frequency. "You're disrupting them," the scientist said, half impressed, half concerned. "I told you," Aiden said. "You made a mistake." "I warned them you were dangerous," the man replied. "They didn't listen. Thought they could contain a human. But the first touch was all it took." Aiden took a step forward again, and this time, the blue field flickered. Not from his pressure, but from inside. The alien network was destabilizing. Why are you helping them? Aiden asked. You're human. I was, the man said quietly. But after 70 years among them, identity becomes optional. You sold us out? I transcended. You might too if you survive. Aiden's fists clenched. He looked at the trembling alien figures, still silent, still watching, but no longer certain. Their control was slipping. You don't get it, Aiden said. Humans don't adapt to cages. We break them. The lights above flickered. Alarms began to pulse in the background, soft at first, then louder. One of the aliens dropped to its knees, overwhelmed by stimuli it couldn't process. The others turned to the scientist with what might have been the closest thing their species had to panic. He glanced at a screen. It's spreading. Yeah, Aiden said, stepping fully into the flickering field. It didn't stop him this time. Welcome to the first day of your last mistake. The room darkened as the systems began to fail. Somewhere, deep inside the ship, something ancient and mechanical awakened in response to the anomaly. And Aiden Reese, the first human they captured, smiled. He was just getting started. The corridors of the alien vessel were alive now, not with purpose, but with confusion. Pale lights once steady now strobed erratically, casting disjointed shadows across the smooth metallic surfaces. The hum that had once lulled the ship like a heartbeat now stuttered, glitched, fractured by something it had never been designed to withstand. Aiden Reese moved like a ghost through the chaos. His presence no longer triggered security fields. The systems could no longer identify him. Not because he'd vanished, but because the ship's logic no longer recognized what a threat looked like. Behind him, the main chamber had descended into turmoil. The alien scientists, once so elegant in their motions, now twitched with corrupted signals. Their expressions, unreadable minutes ago, flickered with unmistakable human echoes. Hesitation, uncertainty, fear. Aiden had seen it before. Not on alien worlds, but in shattered command bunkers and burning outposts. The moment when control turned to collapse. The moment before instinct took over. But this was something stranger. These beings weren't just frightened. They were infected. Not with a disease, but with something worse. An idea. He pressed his hand to a wall panel, and the surface flickered. The ship responded, reluctantly, the way a stubborn horse obeys only when it begins to understand the rider. His thoughts still bled into the vessel's AI systems. Not commands, but intention. Something the ship's programming had never been equipped to parse. On the screen, a layout of the vessel unfolded. Red zones blinked wildly. Containment fields collapsing. Firewalls degrading. Subconscious patterns from Aiden's brain were disrupting their neural relay grid, corrupting the very protocols that govern the crew's cohesion. He didn't fully understand how it was happening, but he understood why. Humans were never built to be studied in a lab. They were built to survive labs. A voice echoed behind him, steady but strained. They're losing themselves. Aiden turned. The scientist, Dr. Kellis, stood alone, backlit by the trembling blue core of the central interface. He looked diminished, older than before, a man watching his life's work fall to pieces. They thought they were immune, Kellis continued. Emotionally sterilized, psychically shielded. But it's not your rage that's breaking them. It's your memory, your grief, your defiance. They try to make me a subject, Aiden replied. But they opened the wrong door. Kellis nodded slowly. You're not just disrupting their ship. You're disrupting them. Their minds are a network. What one feels, all feel, subconsciously. And now they're feeling you. Aiden stepped closer. Why are you still here? You could have run. I wanted to see it happen. Maybe, part of me hoped it would. His eyes drifted upward, toward the flickering lights. 70 years among them. I thought I had found peace and precision. But I forgot what it meant to bleed. There was a moment of stillness between them, broken only by the muffled thud of a distant door sealing itself shut. Somewhere else, containment protocols were trying to adapt. Trying and failing. Aiden studied the older man's face. Do you regret it? Kellis didn't answer immediately. I regret thinking they could ever understand us without becoming us. And now, they are. Piece by piece. From down the hall, a high-pitched whine began to rise, sharp, unnatural. Aiden instinctively drew back into the shadows. A single alien emerged, alone, staggering. Its symmetrical movements were gone. One arm twitched violently. Its face contorted in confusion. It locked eyes with Aiden. And then, it did something no one expected. It spoke. Not in their harmonic tones, but in broken, stuttering English. Why do we feel alone when we are together? The voice was warped, unsure, like a machine trying to translate emotion it had never felt before. Aiden's breath caught in his throat. He glanced at Kellis, whose expression was now tight with awe. They're fragmenting, Kellis whispered. They're developing selves. Individuality. They're becoming like you. The alien's body convulsed. Then it turned and fled, shrieking in a pitch that made the walls tremble. A warning, or perhaps a cry for help. Aiden felt a chill spread through his spine. What happens when they all split? Kellis shook his head. Their unity is their strength. Without it, they collapse. Their technology, their purpose, their very biology, it all depends on the harmony of one mind across many bodies. You've introduced dissonance. And dissonance spreads. Kellis nodded grimly, like wildfire through dry grass. The ship shuddered again, heavier this time. Sirens, if they could be called that, wailed from deep within the vessel. Doors opened and closed erratically. Gravity fluctuated. One hallway twisted slightly, metal groaning under strain. Somewhere, something exploded. Time to go, Aiden said. Kellis didn't move. There's nowhere to go. There's always somewhere, Aiden growled. We built escape plans before we built homes. He scanned the system map again. Deep in the belly of the ship, a small vessel was highlighted, a scout pod. Probably automated, probably locked down, but maybe not for long. He looked back at Kellis. Come with me. But Kellis only shook his head. I made my bed in this silence. I think I'll see how the noise ends. Aiden hesitated for a beat, then gave a nod of respect and turned away. The corridor lit before him in flickers, like an old film reel fighting to keep its frame. Behind him, Kellis returned to the console and whispered softly, to no one at all. We wanted to study humanity. We never considered it might study us back. Aiden moved faster now. The ship was unraveling around him. Not with violence, but with introspection. With alien minds experiencing solitude for the first time. Fear. Regret. Longing. And as they tried to process it, their empire, built on unity, fractured like glass under pressure. He wasn't their prisoner anymore. He was their mirror. And mirrors, once cracked, don't just reflect. They multiply. And break. The scout pod's hatch hissed open with reluctant compliance, its locking mechanisms stuttering before giving in. Aiden stepped inside, scanning the interior, compact, angular, every surface humming with dormant potential. The interface lit up as he approached, but the language was unreadable. It didn't matter. The systems responded to thought now, not words. He'd seen to that. Behind him, the corridor twisted one last time, groaning under the weight of failing symmetry. The ship was no longer a structure. It was an organism dying of a fever it couldn't name. Somewhere far back in its heart, alien minds were still tearing themselves apart, grappling with emotions that didn't belong in their pristine world. He sat in the pilot seat and rested his hand on the control crystal. The interface shivered, sensing his presence, but the pod didn't launch. The vessel hesitated, unsure. No protocol accounted for a human commandeering one of their escape crafts. No calculation weighed the concept of choice. Aiden leaned back and closed his eyes. For a moment, he let the silence return. Not the engineered kind he had awakened to, but the raw silence of thought before action. And in that moment, he remembered the mountain air of Earth. His sister's laughter in the wind. The smell of burning metal and blood on the day everything changed. These memories weren't weapons. But they'd become the deadliest thing he'd ever carried. The pod suddenly jolted. It was a movement, more like recognition. It accepted him now, not as a user, but as something closer to a signal. A contagion encoded in memory, impossible to neutralize. A blue glow filled the cockpit, and a voice emerged from the speakers. It wasn't alien. It wasn't his own. It was composite, a dozen minds trying to speak with one voice. "We are no longer one," it said. "What have you done?" Aiden opened his eyes. "What you feared most. We sought knowledge. Harmony. You brought disorder." "No," he replied. "I brought freedom. You just mistook it for chaos." The voice wavered. "We don't know how to be separate." "That's not my problem," Aiden said, fingers tightening on the launch mechanism. "It's yours now." "Wait," the voice pleaded. "You've infected us. Tell us how to undo it." He paused. Not from pity, but from clarity. "You can't. You invited a human into your house and let him think. You don't erase that. You evolve or you don't." Outside the pod, the hallway dimmed for the last time. Power collapsed in cascading waves as systems disconnected from the now fractured neural core. The ship was dying. Not in flames or shrapnel, but in identity. It no longer knew what it was without its unity. The pod shuddered and finally launched. Aiden felt the weightless pull as it detached from the vessel. Through the cockpit window, he saw the massive alien ship, once majestic, now broken like a fallen monument, drifting through deep space, lights flickering, its hull pulsating in slow agony. And then, as if on cue, something extraordinary happened. One by one, smaller lights flickered into existence all around the mothership. Other pods, other fragments, breaking away, leaving. He watched in silence as hundreds of small craft scattered into the void. Not in fear, but in instinct. For the first time in their existence, the aliens were choosing, splitting off as individuals, casting themselves into unknown darkness, not as a single will, but as many. He hadn't destroyed them. He'd changed them. In the distance, Earth was still just a whisper, light years away, but closer than ever in his mind. He didn't know where the pod would take him, not exactly. But he knew this. No species that had touched the human mind could remain unchanged. They had captured one man. But in doing so, they'd unlocked a wildfire. He opened the comms, not to call for rescue, but to speak into the void. A final message. A warning. To any who listen, this is Aiden Reese. I was taken, studied, dissected in thought, not flesh. They thought I was alone, but I wasn't. I carried every scream, every scar, every piece of the chaos that makes us human. They let me in, and now they'll never forget us. He paused, then smiled faintly. The first human they captured was the last one they ever saw. The pod's engines hummed louder. Stars streaked past the viewport, endless, brilliant, indifferent. Aiden leaned back in his seat, eyes sharp, heart steady. He wasn't going home. He was taking humanity somewhere no one had ever dared to go.